Next, from Springfield, we talked to Representative Dwight Kay, who lost his re-election bid for the House, on the frustration many legislators are feeling toward legislative leaders during the budget stalemate. We also ask what he would do to turn the state around, and how he thinks President-elect Donald Trump could change the federal government. This runs about 20 minutes.
Representative Dwight Kay, thank you for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. Sadly, to say you were the only Republican, I believe, isn't it?
I think that's right.
From the House to lose the election. We wanted to visit with you and discuss a number of issues, but also just to get your perspective of everything that you've seen here in your time in the legislature, as we are here in what might be your last day actively as a member of the House, since this is the fall veto session. Let's remind viewers, when were you first elected?
2009, I took office in 2010.
So, in the broad scope of things, you came in with some ideas, you wanted to bring your business acumen and apply it. What would you say when people ask, so what's going on with the legislature and the legislative process? What's your perspective?
Yeah. Well, the process is a fine process if it works as intended. But when you throw a monkey wrench into it, as has happened the last 6 years that I've been here, it kind of breaks down much like a car that's not well maintained, and you no longer have process. You have people meeting and arguing, and sometimes bitterly arguing, but there's nothing that, from a transactional standpoint, really gets done. And that's not what the process is about. We're sent here to do the job of the people that we represent. And that's been thwarted, at least for me, in the past 6 years. And I think if you were to talk to other representatives, they'd feel very much the same way.
Just yesterday, Speaker Madigan came out of the meeting with the governor, and the governor made his comments, and basically nothing has changed. I mean, it's been 18 months. They're still in a tug of war. No one wants to give on either side. What is the mood? You talk to your Democratic colleagues, I'm sure, as well as the Republican colleagues. What is the mood of what we might call the backbenchers, the non-leaders who aren't going into those meetings? Is there or is there not a growing frustration of what's happening with the state?
Well, I think the frustration started growing last year, mid-year. And I think it's been building, and I think you're about to see an explosion of sorts, a discontent come out of I would say both caucuses, and there's outrage right now. And so I say when explosion, I should say outrage that we don't have a budget in this state. Now, as I understand it today,
we're the only state in the nation.
Only state that doesn't have a budget, and that's absolute folly, because it's not only constitutionally mandated, but it's the responsibility of the people we send here to get that done. And the unfortunate part of it is the people who are here, I honestly believe, in terms of the legislators or the senators that are here, I honestly believe they want to get the job done. Now, there may be a few exceptions, but the politics of Illinois is such that it just doesn't happen.
And who do you blame?
Well, I've been very critical of Speaker Madigan. There's no doubt in my mind that he runs this state, as much as I dislike saying that. He runs the state, he runs it with an iron hand, and process doesn't matter, nor do people matter to him. But politics matters, and so that's why we're in the fix we're in, because we're playing politics and we're not taking care of people.
And as a result of not having a budget, we are spending more than we would have with a budget. The comptroller's office says we're going to have something like $13 billion of unpaid bills by the end of the year, so we're 30 days away from that.
Exactly.
At what point, and we should tell people you are a business executive,
Yes.
you've been for long, so you know you're fiscal conservative, you know sound money management. At what point do we cross the threshold to where the liabilities that we build up in the state are such that we're just never going to be in a position to catch up to them.
Well, you may be there or fast approaching that point now. And I say that just based on the liabilities that we're staring in the face and yet no plan to deal with them. And I refer, of course, to pensions.
Which are estimated at about $30 billion?
$30 billion, yeah.
Unfunded liability.
Unfunded liability. Now, I don't believe that takes into account the unanticipated losses from the pension funds itself, where monies were invested by, taking an example, teachers' money that they put into the fund, and then somebody invests that money for them. The returns have never been as high as predicted, and today they're not nearly as high as they should be. So having said that, we may be looking at additional liabilities to that $130 billion. But, the truth of the matter is we're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to addressing this issue, and we're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to where we stand with respect to honoring our pension obligations.
Well, and I want to point out to people, not to depress everyone, but just so they are aware. The state is one government, $130 billion unfunded liabilities. The city of Chicago is a different government. Their fire and police, they've made efforts to catch up. They've made some progress, but that's still woefully underfunded. The Chicago public schools are all but bankrupt. Some people argue they ought to declare bankruptcy. Right. Just today, the governor vetoed a bill that would have put $215 million to the Chicago public schools, but because it was tied in his veto message to a deal on the pensions, which we don't have, he vetoed that bill. Right. So I don't know that we're ever, even if we go north of 2% national growth, which hopefully we will, and that'll help the state coffers. If the economy grows, and the economy grows in Illinois, we'll have more revenue. It seems like a huge hurdle to ever catch up. And again, when you talk to what extent do you get a sense, and I'm just really asking, I'm not trying to lead the witness, so to speak, but to what extent do you get a sense that your fellow members, to what extent are they concerned about that, or are they aware of it? Do they think about these numbers, or are they not?
Well, they're aware of the numbers, but they're also aware that the process has broken down, and we're essentially dysfunctional. And I don't want to depress too many people either, but good government starts with telling the truth, and that's the truth. We are a dysfunctional body, and as I said before, the reason we're dysfunctional is because we have one man who is not interested in the process, and he's not interested in people, and so what's left? Politics. And I'm concerned, while we throw numbers around, and it may be discouraging to people, we can't go bankrupt. But you can get to a point where you're so financially dysfunctional, or you're to the point where you can't pay your bills, so you default. And that's a business term, default. Now, in business, you can go bankrupt.
And the city could, but not the state.
That is correct. That's exactly right. The state cannot. So when you start writing checks that you can't cover, or they bounce, or they come back in some form or fashion, that's a whole different matter that somebody is going to have to deal with.
So to make that clear, if the court says, which they have, you can't cut pension benefits because it's in the Constitution, but at some point we're going to come to, and it might be sooner rather than later, where we just don't have the money. The money's not in the checking account to send those pension beneficiaries their check. We will not have legally cut the pensions, but the comptroller will just be sitting on checks that can't be issued.
And you're right. I would think in that particular case, if we see that come to fruition sooner than later, you may see pension checks cut, but cut for less than is due. And that's my fear, because we do owe that liability. That's a promise. It's in the Constitution. The Supreme Court in Illinois has decided 7-0 that we need to pay it. And I think they also said, hey, we need a plan. And there is no plan, and that's because we've put people second to politics.
Let me remind the people, or have you remind them, what is it you do and what's your position with the trucking company?
Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of a trucking company in Edwardsville, Illinois. In fact, we're one of the largest trucking companies, car haul trucking companies in America and Canada. So working with numbers and working with finance and keeping things stable is what I'm used to doing. And so it's very hard to watch what's happening here because it's just it's contrary to what normal business people do. Contrary.
Does your firm have a pension?
It does.
Is it funded? What level of funding is it? Just to compare a private sector, it's a 401k kind of a plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a businessman and somebody who deals with businesses constantly because of the nature of your business, what do you tell your constituents? What do you tell the business community when they ask you about what's going on in Springfield?
Well, I've told them that there has to be a way to remove Mike Madigan from being Speaker of the House because that's the impediment to getting any progress done. We need reforms in the state. Mike Madigan doesn't want reforms. We need people who rein in money. Mike Madigan doesn't want to rein in money. Mike Madigan wants to pick favorites. We don't pick favorites. We work for the people of the state of Illinois, so we shouldn't be picking favorites. I honestly speaking, while I like the Speaker as an individual, I think he's far past his time in the House, and I think he leaves, when he does leave, he leaves with a legacy that is not one of anything very positive.
And then as we close out, again, knowing what you know, if you were in control of, if you had the power to affect change, what changes would you make to turn this state around given the tremendous financial challenges we face?
Well, the first thing, and maybe the easiest thing to do, although it wouldn't be popular, would be to consolidate in a number of different areas. And we certainly then would need to look at how effective all the townships are that we have in this state. By the way, we have the largest state government in the nation by some 250.
In terms of what is it the largest?
Well, government entities that are so-called working for
units of government.
Exactly. So I'm told that we've got townships that are way beyond flush with money. All they do is buy new trucks, don't do a lot of work. We've got duplication in our school systems where we could consolidate some of these schools and still provide an adequate education. So those are two really big areas of cutting out something we really don't need. It's archaic. Most states don't bother with townships. We've continued to do it because there's some political benefit in patronage. We need to do that, and we need then to look at how we can consolidate various school districts and various other systems within the state. I would also argue that a good auditor could go through our books, look at the grants and look at the return on that grant money and make a good argument that we're giving money away in terms of grants that aren't needed, that produce absolutely no result that's meaningful.
And we will see what happens now. I mean, one of the changes is obviously going to be there's going to be a President Trump, an entirely different direction of the federal government. They're going to be looking at reforms. We don't know yet what impact that might have in Illinois, but again, you're a Republican, he's a Republican, so I'm imagining you're in favor of it. But what are your thoughts about going forward relative to this change at the federal level?
Well, one of the things that I'm encouraged by in seeing President Trump, President-elect Trump, coming into office is this. I've turned over a number of cases of pretty egregious fraud, pretty egregious wasteful spending to the U.S. Attorney's Office and others of authority, and nothing's been done with that information. It's big dollars, and I'm just
When you say big, like what area are we talking? Millions of dollars?
yeah, maybe more than that. There's been, in fact, I filed House Resolution 168 that has to do with adoption and child care and some pretty clear wrongdoing in that area within a department. And I filed a resolution yesterday. I've turned information over to support my resolution, and I'm also sending letters off to the U.S. Attorney, the FBI, and to the department heads here in Springfield. Yeah, again, that's what business people do. You know, they dig in, they find waste because that's their profit. That's your profit. So I think President Trump, if Senator Sessions is indeed put in the office or becomes Attorney General and is affirmed in the Senate, confirmed, I think you're going to see a president and a senator who will then be Attorney General go after these things pretty quickly. Big change.
I'm sure we wish well for the state. We face these enormous challenges. Hopefully we keep in contact with you, and
Absolutely.
we wish you well, and
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas to you and your
Thank
family.
you. Thank you very much.